Exploring the aftermath of a global nuclear war. The specter of a nuclear world war presents an unprecedented global threat, characterized by immediate and catastrophic impacts. The potential for widespread devastation raises concerns about the survival of human civilization and the natural environment. Nuclear weapons have evolved dramatically since their first use in 1945. Initially possessed by a handful of nations, today several countries boast these powerful arsenals, each capable of erasing entire cities and altering the Earth's climate. The trigger for a nuclear world war could be a complex interplay of miscommunications, aggressive policies, or accidental launches. International tensions and arms races increase the risk, turning every geopolitical conflict into a potential spark. Following a nuclear explosion, the immediate aftermath is devastating. A fireball vaporizes all matter, followed by shockwaves and intense heat, destroying infrastructure and causing widespread casualties within seconds. The environmental repercussions begin with a nuclear winter, where soot and debris propelled into the atmosphere block sunlight, drastically reducing temperatures. This phenomenon threatens global agriculture, potentially leading to mass starvation and ecological collapse. The impact of a nuclear world war on global climate and weather patterns would be catastrophic. Nuclear explosions would inject vast amounts of dust and soot into the atmosphere, leading to significant cooling, disrupted rainfall patterns, and prolonged periods of reduced sunlight. Radiation spread following nuclear detonations poses severe health risks. Radioactive fallout can cover large areas, contaminating water supplies and agricultural land. This exposure results in increased risks of cancer, genetic mutations, and other severe health problems. Surviving in a post-nuclear war world presents immense challenges. The destruction of infrastructure and the widespread presence of radiation would make finding safe shelter and clean water increasingly difficult. Food shortages would become prevalent due to contaminated fields and disrupted supply chains. The breakdown of societal structures after a nuclear conflict is inevitable. Government functions may collapse, leading to chaos and lawlessness. Communities would be forced to fend for themselves, with social order and public services drastically deteriorating. Exploring potential nuclear fallout shelters reveals a grim reality. Most existing shelters are outdated and limited in capacity. Effective protection requires modern facilities that can shield against intense radiation and sustain life for extended periods. The psychological impact on survivors of a nuclear world war is profound. Experiencing such devastation firsthand can lead to severe mental health issues, including PTSD and depression. The constant stress of survival magnifies these effects. The global economy would crumble post-nuclear war. Trade routes would be disrupted, financial markets would collapse, and basic resources would become scarce. The dependency on a functioning economy for survival would create critical vulnerabilities. Major cities, often the hubs of cultural and economic activity, would face utter destruction. The loss of infrastructure and human life would make these areas uninhabitable, turning once bustling metropolises into ghost towns. The long-term ecological damage from a nuclear world war would be profound, affecting biodiversity and ecosystems globally. Radioactive contamination could lead to genetic mutations and the extinction of numerous plant and animal species, disrupting natural balances. Survivors in isolated or less affected areas might stand a better chance at continuing the human race. These regions could become crucial refuges, supporting small communities that rely on localized resources and traditional survival skills. Technological regression is another real possibility, as the destruction of infrastructure and the loss of technical expertise would hinder progress. Survivors may have to revert to older technologies and methods for living, significantly altering their way of life. In a world stripped of its modern conveniences, communication would evolve out of necessity. Traditional digital and mass communication methods would likely be unavailable, compelling survivors to rely on more primitive, direct forms of communication to rebuild communities. The moral and ethical landscape post-nuclear war would be profoundly altered. Such a catastrophe would force humanity to reconsider the values and principles that led to such devastation, potentially catalyzing a global reevaluation of conflict and cooperation. In the wake of destruction, international peace and disarmament movements could gain unprecedented momentum. The stark reality of nuclear war's consequences might unify nations in a collective effort to prevent future conflicts and promote disarmament. Religion and spirituality might see a resurgence as survivors seek comfort and answers in a post-war world. These systems could play a pivotal role in providing the moral framework necessary for rebuilding and healing fractured communities. The role of education will become paramount, not just in transferring knowledge, but in fostering critical thinking and innovation necessary for survival and rebuilding. Cultural preservation will also play a crucial role in post-war recovery. It will provide a sense of identity and continuity for surviving populations, helping to bind communities together under shared heritage and values. Future human settlements will need to be strategically planned to maximize safety and resource efficiency. Locations less affected by radiation and with access to natural resources will become prime spots for new cities. Sustainable practices will be central to these settlements, incorporating renewable energy sources and self-sustaining agriculture to ensure long-term viability. Throughout this challenging time, the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit will be tested. The collective endeavor to rebuild society will necessitate a re-evaluation of values and priorities, potentially leading to a more harmonized global community focused on preservation and sustainability.